Welcome to Reflections. I'm your host, Patrick Tomlinson. And today we have with us Kevin Guscott, who is a social entrepreneur all the way in Trelawny, in Jamaica. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you, Patrick. Good evening to you and your viewers as well.
I was happy that you could make it, Kevin. We've been having this discussion. You are currently in Trelawny, Jamaica, yes?
Just slight correction. I'm in Manchester, northern Manchester.
Northern Manchester. Okay.
Yes, so close to the border with Trelawny.
Okay. So, Kevin, my understanding is that you have a very interesting background. You are a graduate of the City College of Engineering, City College School of Architecture, correction?
Yes.
And you decided to go back to Jamaica and to get involved in the growing of coffee and also to look at other investment opportunities. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So once again, thank you for taking the time out. So Kevin,
it's my pleasure.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you grew up and where you grew up.
Okay, so I grew up pretty much close around here in northern Manchester, Cragged district it is called, and did primary school level, and then went on to the Cockpit College in Mandeville with common entrance. And from there, I went into UTEC, TENCAS, to do some work in land economy and valuation surveying. That's a program in the building department at UTEC. That's where I got exposed to planning and development and some of the issues concerning land and how we also went about handling land and how we went about building communities. From there, I worked with one very illustrious land surveyor and planning and development surveyor, Eastern Douglas. That's where I sort of got my formative work and thinking done in the space of land development and the issues that people would have had as they go about doing their projects. So I got a sense of one of the angles that was critical in developing our country, which is housing, and housing obviously links with infrastructure and obviously links with the supportive pieces of land use that supports housing. So after with Eastern Douglas, I went into Brooklyn College and did a Bachelor's of Science, a BA in political science with some concentration in economics. And that was pretty much to get a sense of some of the issues, the political issues that drive the decisions at the city scale. By that time, I started to get much more interested in how you solve problems for cities like Kingston, existing ecosystem that is very important to us all, but on the edges, it frays and disintegrates and degenerates, and there are reasons for that. So I spent some time looking at the politics of a city, how people make decisions. I studied North America and Europe to a large extent, and then extrapolate from that the relationships in the Caribbean. And so after doing that work, I came home and luckily did a stint with Eastern Douglas again, and he was in government. And I was lucky enough to get a supportive role with him for a few years. And it was very interesting. He was the Minister of Ministry of Environment and Housing. And that's where I pretty much honed my professional skill in solving some of the large problems of housing. And in Jamaica, private sector housing and government sector housing is two different set of issues. They join at some point. But inside, you get a real sense of the weight, the burden of providing accommodation for our population in various sections of the island. Yes.
Okay, but before we jump to that, Kevin, which I think we'd like to deal with in another program, I'd like to deal with or look at your formative years. You said you went to primary school in Jamaica. What primary school did you go to?
So it's a Cragged all-age primary school. It still exists and still churning out good students. Yes, that's my school.
Do you remember any teachers that impacted you or nurtured you in any particular direction, or anything that stands out significantly?
At that level, yes. All my teachers were pretty much good. They all, at all the grades in which I attended, I could almost say I had a teacher that I was very into. Let me just parallel this. While I attended school, my mother was the postmistress, and she had the luxury then of receiving the daily gleaner. And at a young age of 6, 7, 8, 9, I usually run to
the national newspaper, right?
Yeah.
For those
the
who not
Gleaner. Right. Mm-hmm. So in thinking back and doing some of the work that I have done, I remember reading some of the headlines, and let's just say that then we had a lot of issues coming up concerning developments and growth in Jamaica. We're talking about would have been the late 70s, middle to late 70s, when we had that very sort of a serious time in Jamaica, most people would say. But then I started to be informed, started to look at the editorials, started to look at the cartoons, and started to inform myself around what were some of the issues that people got concerned with. And so that was a very good time to learn.
Okay. Kevin, I wanted to look at also something that is very interesting, and it ties into what we're celebrating in the United States, which is Black History Month. And you're telling me at one point that you're from this community called the Maroons, which I think is a very, very important element. And they have a very fascinating history. So would you like to take a few minutes to tell us about the community which you came from?
Yes. So my community, it's the most important geographical feature in my community is that we are in the southwest quadrant of the Cockpit Country.
Tell us what the Cockpit Country is. Describe it a little bit for us.
So the Cockpit Country is about 60,000 hectares of land that covers sections of the west central part of the island. And that would mean covering sections of St. James, St. Elizabeth, Trelawney, St. Anne, and part of Manchester. So all those parishes actually find themselves with their boundaries within Cockpit Country. So the Cockpit Country is, if we take the Maroonage part of it, it's a very important part of our history and cultural development. That's a space in which the country itself was liberated from. That's a space where people who were brought here and got caught up in the forced labor economic system, some of them found their ways into the hinterlands. And so the Cockpit Country is karst limestone up and down and giving that cockpit look. And it is said that you could climb one hill and look behind you, and it still looks like one that you've just climbed. It's just that. It's interesting enough. The British lost a lot of wars in the Cockpit Country to the extent that they created treaties, and the several treaties I've heard that was created for them to sue for peace, and so that they could settle down to try to manage Jamaica as a colony. But for most part of it, if you look at the history, the spinal part of the Jamaica that runs from Portland all the way into the western were Maroon territories. And so I would have been related to Maroons from this side, the western or the Accompong Maroons. But also I would have, and I am related by blood to the Portland Maroons. That I know definitively.
Okay, give us a strict definition of maroon. What is a maroon? Because maroons are all over South America, Central America. Tell us give us a strict definition.
So we could say maroonage, and maroonage describe populations that were caught up in the forced labor economic systems.
Slavery.
Well, yes, some people commonly say that slavery, right. Yes.
But you prefer the term forced labor.
Forced labor economic system. And it's very important that we see that system and not as a passing ship, like called slavery. If you cut it from system, we're discussing that now, but maybe one time I'll get the chance to elaborate what the forced labor economic system looks like. But just to say that maroonage would have been people who found it necessary to leave these systems and move into the hinterlands, and all these countries, Haiti, which would have been Hispaniola, Cuba, Jamaica, all have mountain ridges that was not so easy for the European population to traverse. And so they generally stay on the plains where you could grow and rear, cattle or grow sugar or large crops. But there were always people who decided to opt out of this system and create different subcultures within these areas. And in different territories, they're called slightly different, but they are maroons. So in Jamaica, the term maroon takes on and they do take on a slight different definition based on how that maroon population operates within the larger society. Within Jamaica, though, this was a state within a state. They fought a war, won the war, and brought the English to come to terms with them through treaties. And it was on those treaties. Right. But it was on those treaties that the British gave them control over the areas that it would be nominal control. It would be sort of like they control these areas, but at least the British signed off on it to say, hey, these are your land. And so the Maroons in Jamaica were left by themselves for quite a while. And so they have developed a type of culture, which is Jamaican in its larger form, but in itself, it has subtle differences that you will recognize if you are a Maroon. Yes.
Okay, Kevin.
Yes.
So you are from what is generically known as the Western Maroons, right?
Yes, I live in the territory of the Accompong Maroons, the Western Maroons. Yes.
Okay.
But as I said, by blood, I'm from the Portland Maroons as well. Okay,
and they have their own chief, their own self-governing structures. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
That is a piece. I'm one of those Jamaican Maroons that have not sufficiently integrated myself with the Maroon communities to know several of their practices. But just to say, though, they have their own government systems, in which they adjudicate among themselves, the sharing of property, and the different relationships that they have. It's somewhat different from the larger society, but I would not want to act as if I have real expertise in the culture in itself. I spend more time looking at their ability to be successful combatants, and how they execute that, and how they manage to break the whole of the European colonizers, as they try to put the whole country in a forced labor economic system.
Okay. Well, suffice to say, there were fierce opponents of the British, and they were able to break some of the bonds of peonage and servitude, and to establish their own independence, which is significant, and a significant achievement.
By addition,
go ahead.
Sorry, by addition, I totally omitted such as the level that they have brought to the culture. When we speak of the food from the Caribbean, when you're in your parts, we speak of jerk, and jerk is one of the basic maroon food style that has sort of found itself into the wider population, and just about everyone enjoys jerk pork or jerk chicken and other type of stuff. Yeah.
So what is jerk in a sense for somebody who doesn't know?
All right. So
why were things jerked?
All right. So jerk would have been really, well, within any culture, food is so important. And so we're in war, and our sisters are up in the hills, and they're fighting people who are coming inside there with muskets and all of that, trying to shoot. So you had to move the population around in the mountains. And although so Maroons would have planted what we call ground provisions, but and they would have hunted wild hogs that would have run wild in the mountains. So would be getting, say, some meat cleaned, washed, and seasoned, and put on the ground, and then there would be a fire that was it. So it would be wrapped in stuff like banana leaves, well wrapped, well tied up, and then it would be cooked to prevent the British from identifying their locations via smoke. So it's almost a smokeless kind of barbecue going on. Wow. It's cooking. And so it was for survival, and it was a lot of innovation. But that same innovation has translated itself much more widely, and most Jamaicans enjoy some jerk pork or some jerk chicken, as a part of their cuisine, and have interestingly exported that as a part of the culture.
Okay, very good. So currently you have gone back and you're involved in projects in that general area, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to share a little bit of that with us?
Yes. We're working in different projects. Let's just say that my community is primarily an agricultural community. And the largest product that we have, whenever you someone have a nice piece of yellow yam, in the Bronx or Brooklyn or Philadelphia, chances are that might come from somewhere near me. Southern Jelani is the primary producer and exporter of yellow yams in Northern America. So a lot of people I know participate quite intensively in that part of the economy. So that's what is going on. If I plant yam, I myself would eventually get involved in supporting the economy around that side. But what is topical and what is important to me right now, in terms of as I've tried to find my way as a climate scientist and as a political scientist as well, trying to understand what COVID represent in the parts of the country. So I will pivot to tell you that while I have a home office here that I do my work and research, I create a situation where students from my community come by and they do have access to Wi-Fi for free so that they could do their work. And it's not a large establishment that I have, but it is sufficient to allow students from the same primary school, from Knox, from Homewood, and from Troy. All these are high schools: Troy High School, Homewood Technical High School, Knox College, and Spalding's High School. So these are students who joined me during the course of the day, and some were here early on. They left already, and tomorrow's holidays. But basically, I provide support for them to keep access to their class. And if you ask me why is that important, is that I'll tell you anecdotally. So one of my students, she will be doing exams next year. And since COVID, she had told me she is in a class of 39 people. And since COVID, she is now in a class of 13 people. So she's so 1/3 of the class that she's accustomed to is not participating. She tells me that at times there are 5 people in that class and two. And she said,
and is this virtually?
Yes, virtual class that day, because the system is to try to cut the students as much of their class. But the difficulty is that a lot of students do not have at home hardware and support to connect. And so what we do is that we get a robust system, and then we create a situation that people could come in and log on and be able to, access their class. And why I thought this situation was important is that she told me that there have been times that it's just she alone with her class, with her teacher. And I'm thinking that if I had 6 months of school, 6 months when I did not attend school in my formative years, how difficult it would have been for me to get along, to be even having this conversation with you. So I'm really taken up and I'm really bothered by the level of concern from, and I think the government and the school system is overwhelmed, I have to say. I'm still hoping that someone will come and ask what is happening in this house, what is happening to this kid, and what's happening in school. That does not happen. So what we're doing is sort of like finger in the hole, so to speak. We wish if we could do a much more robust activity where we have 20 students, where we could have them cleaned and connect to their teachers. When they clean, have their environment clean. They could connect to their teachers. They will be separate enough that they do not bother each other. And, students go to school, they expect to be fed. So, of course, what we do, we have to provide some kind of meals to sort of carry them through, because they get here at 8:30 and they leave at 3. It's a school day. So it's not a large activity that we're involved with. We are not yet registered as a not-for-profit or anything like that. We're just a community, part of a community that recognize that this is a serious problem. And before we talk more about it, let's just do what we can. So right now we're working with 5 to 7 candidates per week. It's not enough to cover the needs out there for students, and and to keep up with the work that is needed. So it's definitely a concern. And as a climate scientist, thinking about sustainability and all of that, I am looking for where are the engineers and the people who are going to plan to take us through the issues that we will have as it relates to, climate change. How do we create enough food, build our roads, maintaining our system without an educated population? So as much as we have COVID, which is right here, I see ourselves having to come up with very serious strategies to figure out how do you educate a 10-year-old who might just reach a stage where they cannot spell their name. That's my concern as it is right now.
Okay, that's pretty much a mouthful. So, Kevin, in the remaining 3 minutes or so, I'd
Yes.
like to ask you to sum up. Hopefully, we will be able to invite you back and you will consent to coming back to speak a little bit more about your project in the hinterlands of Jamaica and to share some of your, your challenges and your experiences of what that's about. So you could probably take, 2 minutes to tell us a little bit more, in summary of your whole project, your whole.
Yeah. So one way to look at it is if we all assume that Jamaica is land of wood and water, and then you wonder where's the wood and where's the water. If we have our wood and water, would be in a process where we could be regenerative and would be sustainable. And so growing up near the Cockpit Country, I always knew that I was close to some important geological and geomorphological feature that I already knew of, swallowtail butterflies and some of the endemic plants and so on, but also of the important water resource that the Cockpit Country provides for the rest of the island. And it has been said that 40% of the island receives its water from the Cockpit Country. So I am interested in seeing how best we can create a regenerative systems within the Cockpit Country that people could live and raise family and live well. I'm also concerned about the possibility of mining in sections of the Cockpit Country. The soil in the Cockpit Country is well known for its wealth in the ore bauxite. And we have not reached a state where we have come to the point of understanding if we remove this ore, we'll be removing our water, our ability to have land of food and water. And that would intrinsically make us poor forever. So I'm trying to have a conversation and also demonstrate projects that will make the Cockpit Country much more habitable and be supportive economically for the people that lives here and also for the wider part of the country that depends on us maintain this into a situation where there's water, there's wood, there's food, and then there's maroon culture that would inform us of how to live whenever we find ourselves under very stressful situations.
Quite a mouthful, Kevin. And we've said a lot and we've touched upon a lot, which we would like to look at in subsequent episodes. I want to take the time out to thank you for taking the time out to share with us and to share with our viewers of some of the issues in the Cockpit Country in Jamaica. Thank you so much, Kevin, for coming.
I'm so gratified that you have invited me and allow me to share a little bit with the people who love the Cockpit Country.